So phonemic sequence describes possible sound combinations in a language, or basically ways in which phonemes can be arranged in languages at the beginning, the middle, or the end of words. And there are rules that guide the combination and the arrangement of phonemes in all languages. So if you look at this example, we see the sound j being able to come at the beginning of words in the initial position, jump. But also that same sound j is able to come in a medial position, as in adjust, and then in final position in cage. So we can see that the j sound can exist in all three positions. But there are some words in English where that sounds cannot exist in those positions. So what about the ending sound in fox? So those two ending sounds, ks, can that exist at the beginning? Can that phonemic sequence of ks start at the beginning? The answer is no. So we can have that ks in the middle of words, like in the word boxes, right? Ks, boxes, and at the end in fox, but we can't have it in initial position. So phonemic sequence is talking about the combination of two or more phonemes in the different places in the word. So up until now, we've been working with phonemes that are used in English. Now I'm going to introduce you to phonemes that are not used in English and invite you to a challenge. Well, the first one before we do that is to talk about the phoneme sequences in other languages, for example, in Spanish. So in Spanish, the s sound does not exist in initial position. If you were to look for a word in Spanish that begins with s, with that sound, you'll notice that every single s sounding phoneme has an e at the beginning of the word. So Stephanie becomes Estefany, or sport becomes esport. And so there's an sound, which is represented by the e letter in Spanish, the sound, which precedes the s sound. Okay? Let's look at some other non-English sound combinations. So what I'm going to play for you is a video about from South Africa. It's from a language in South Africa called Xhosa. And it's pretty difficult. I studied it when I was in South Africa. And the phonemic sequences are particularly difficult when you say them in words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you watch this video, and then we're going to try and practice it together.
What is occurring, everybody? Welcome to Xhosa Kaya. I am so sorry that this lesson took so long, but anyway, it was worth it. I believe I'm going to teach you how to say the tricks. For example, Xhosa, my language that I speak. It is one of the three major clicks that we use. The three clicks are X, which is, or the C, which is pronounced the utango, and the Q, which is pronounced T. So
okay, so let's do those together. Okay, let's do it with him after he says it.
How to say the clicks. For example, Xhosa.
Okay, so what I challenge you to do now is try and repeat that sound by itself, okay, in isolation, sort of what he just did.
For example, Xhosa.
Okay. Now try to say it in combination as a whole word. For example, isiXhosa. Okay, becomes much harder. Let's listen to the next phoneme.
Language that I speak. It is one of the three major clicks that we use. The three clicks are X, which is, or this.
So if you were going to say that, but then if you say it in the context of a word, it becomes much more difficult.
C, which is pronounced.
So if you were to say that, easy. But now when he says it in a word, try and copy him. So utango, right, becomes it's much more difficult. And then the last one.
And the Q, which is pronounced T. So I will now try to teach you how to say this.
Okay, and if you'd like, you can watch the rest of that video that describes how to do that. But the point here is to show you that there are sounds that exist in other languages which we don't have in English, and the same thing for English language learners who come in to learn English. We actually have some sounds that many other languages don't have. One of those being the and then. A lot of other languages do not have that sound, and so most of the time what ends up happening is, like we saw that Italian man in Malta video, the man substituted the for the d. And the reason why he substituted that for d is because both are voiced. And so he's trying to find the closest sound to that phoneme that he can't pronounce. The other sound in English that is pretty difficult for English language learners is th, as in think, which many other English language learners say either s, as in sink, or f, as in think. And notice how s, f, and th are all have the voiceless component that is similar between them. Okay, so we're going to also learn about stress in English, and that's one way in which you're going to try and analyze and describe an English language learner's ability for phonology in English. Stress versus syllable time languages is something that you should have read for today, but let me show you a video describing syllable time languages. So, stress-timed languages are, for example, English is an example of a stress-timed language, and it refers to the degree of force with which a syllable is uttered. So, in all English words of more than one syllable, there's going to be one of those syllables that is uttered with stronger stress or emphasis than the others. And so in a phrase, in sentences, when English speakers speak, they're going to emphasize different syllables stronger than others, and also specific words stronger than others. This is very different to syllable-timed languages, because in syllable-timed languages, every syllable is stressed equally. Okay, so this is what I'm going to show you now, an example of a syllable-timed language. You're going to see this newscaster who is telling us about the weather or the news, and notice how every single syllable carries the same weight.
观众朋友晚上好，今天早晨5点半，热带风暴风神登陆广东深圳。通过雷达，我们可以侦测到风神已经给广东南部带去暴雨或大暴雨，而且这种风雨还在继续。中央气象台今天下午6点钟发布台风消。
Okay, so notice how it's quite choppy, right? It sounds like da 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 da, and every time she speaks, every syllable is emphasized in the same way. Hopefully, you're able to notice how different that is to English. So if you focus on my words right now and the way that I'm speaking, I am emphasizing different things, right? My intonation rises and falls, and I'm emphasizing particular syllables in different ways than others, right? That's very different to the syllable time languages where every single syllable is stressed. And let me show you another little video that exemplifies how English is a stress-timed language.
This is a mini lecture on two different types of languages: syllable-time languages and stress-timed languages. In most languages, the more syllables there are, the longer it takes to say something. And this seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you think that the longer a sentence looks in writing, the longer it should take to say it? Well, that's true of most languages in the world. That's because each syllable is more or less the same length as the other syllables. The rhythm of this kind of a language sounds like this. Da-da-da-da-da-da. When every syllable is approximately the same length as every other syllable, of course it takes more time to say something as you add syllables to it. Languages that work like these are called syllable-time languages. English is not a syllable-time language, because in English, the syllables are not at all similar in length. Some syllables are very long. They take a long time to say. Other syllables in English are very short. They're gone before, well, almost before you can hear them. The rhythm of English sounds like this. Da-da-da-da-da. Or it can sound like this. Da-da-da. Or it can sound like this. Da-da-da. Or a lot of other alterations or alternations between the short does and the long does. English is a kind of language that is called stress-timed. Let's look at an example. On the screen, you'll see a series of sentences. And the sentences have three words that are the same. We have dogs, and we have chase, and we have cats. But as you look at the sentences, they get longer and longer. At least they get longer and longer on the paper because we're adding more syllables. But listen to me as I say these sentences. Dogs chase cats. The dogs chase cats. The dogs chase the cats. The dogs will chase the cats. The dogs will be chasing the cats. Now, isn't that strange? We keep adding syllables each time we say the sentence, but each sentence takes just about the same amount of time to say as the shorter one before it. And in fact, the first sentence, dogs chase cats, takes about the same amount of time as the last sentence, the dogs will be chasing the cats. That's because each sentence has three stressed syllables. Dogs, chase, and cats. We'll be talking more later about what exactly it means for a syllable to be stressed and how you decide which syllables will be stressed. So for right now, just know that if you learn the rhythm of the language you're trying to speak, you'll be a lot easier to understand. This is an
Okay, so let's continue where we left off. Hopefully now you have understood the difference between stress-timed languages, which includes English, and syllable-timed languages, such as Mandarin. The difference also with English as being a stress-timed language is that content words are the words that are stressed. Function words are those that are not stressed. And so content words include things like verbs, adjectives, adverbs, nouns, and those are the words that are stressed. So if you remember in that sentence, the dogs chase the cats. The words that were stressed were dogs, chase, and cats. And dogs and cats represent nouns. Chase represents a verb. The function words would be the words such as prepositions like in, on, under, conjunctions such as but, and, or, so, or articles such as the, his, her, she. And so notice in that sentence, the dogs chase the cats. The is the part of the sentence that is not stressed. So that's another element that you want to look for to determine if someone is speaking in a stress-timed way or a syllable-timed way. And that's also how I expect you to be thinking and analyzing that oral language sample for your assignment. Also, in words that have more than one syllable, so things like doctor or bombastic or beautiful, there's going to be a syllable that is stressed more than others. Here's an example. So we have two sets of words that are spelled the same way, but the way that we say them is going to show you that they have different meanings. So address versus address. So when I say address, which syllable, because there are two syllables, has the emphasis? Address. If you said the first part, you're right. Address. So notice how address gets the emphasis, the first part. And address is the noun, right? If I were to say address, like she addressed her, we can firstly tell that the emphasis is on the second syllable, dress, and also that it's a verb, right? So address, as in my address is in Boca. Or she addressed her yesterday. Okay? Let's look at the same thing with present and present. So present is a noun, right? And we can tell because the stress is on the first syllable, right? The present is for her. However, if we shift the emphasis onto the second syllable, as in I presented the project, or I present tomorrow, we can tell that it's a verb. So this is something else that I want you to keep in mind, because in your oral language analyses, you're going to be looking for the ways in which your ELLs stress multisyllabic words and determine if they're doing it correctly or incorrectly. Here is another example of how to distinguish syllable timed and stress timing. So Mandarin, Chinese speakers, Chinese people who speak Mandarin are going to speak it in a syllable timed manner, and you saw that in the video. But so Spanish is also a syllable timed language. So here we have the same beat on every syllable. And here I'm pointing with my mouse. This is an image that shows you the rhythm of the person as they say. La pronunciación es importante. La pronunciación es importante. So every single syllable is stressed in the same way. La pronunciación es importante. This is very different to pronunciation is important. So notice how A is stressed and po is stressed. Pronunciation is important. And so you can see also it's visualized by these shorter and taller people. Whereas in the Spanish, la pronunciación es importante has the same stress. And again, cats chase mice. The cats have chased the mice. The cats will chase the mice. The cats have been chasing the mice. The cats could have been chasing the mice. Notice how cats, chase, and mice always get the stress. And again, with chasing now has two syllables, and so you have to determine which of the syllables is stressed. In this case, it would be the beginning. Okay, if we were going to flip this, right? Chasing versus chasing. Do you see the difference? Chasing is the emphasis is on the second syllable. Chasing, the emphasis is on the first. Okay, so this is a slide that just basically talks about the importance of teaching suprasegmental phonology, where you call ELL's attention to intonation, rhythm, word stress, those aspects that are usually not explicitly talked about by a teacher and are not really distinguished for the ELL. And so a really great technique is to encourage students to shadow talk, which means they find a video clip of a speaker, a native English speaker, and that they sit and listen to the intonation, the rhythm, and the word stress of the speaker and try and mimic the person. And so as they watch the video, they can actually mimic along with the person and say the same things in the same manner, and this way they will eventually learn the same intonation and rhythm patterns as well as the word stress.